Welcome in to the show, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming it online on the new and improved extrasports1300.com, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health. I very much appreciate your patronage. If you would like to take your experience to the next level, you can text or call into the show at 719 24/7 1313. Let us begin with a few thought starters, which we call What's Driving the Show. All right, we start with Payton's math not really mathing. Did a deeper dive into this algorithm that Seth Wickersham wrote about yesterday on ESPN.com. Not really going into it with any real expectations, just kind of wanting to get a bigger picture of all of this and see. I guess there's one thing. I wanted to see if Sean Payton was really onto something here. That was my goal. Is he or is he not? Well, I kind of did a similar bit of math. And the only difference that I did as opposed to Sean Payton was I just took fumbles plus sacks plus interceptions divided by dropbacks. He did each one of those as a ratio and then added them all up. We're looking for the same thing, right? We're looking for the quarterbacks who limit mistakes, limit critical errors the best coming out of college. And I did the last 10 years of first-round picks. And I'm happy to report that Bo Nix is actually better on my algorithm the way I did it than the way Sean Payton did it. He's number one. There hasn't been a quarterback coming into the draft the last 10 years that is better than Bo Nix at limiting fumbles, sacks, and interceptions. But he joins a list that includes Mitchell Trubisky, Bryce Young, Trevor Lawrence, and Michael Penix. And then conversely, the 5 quarterbacks in the last 10 years to be taken in the first round that were the worst at this: Lamar Jackson, Cam Ward, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Deshaun Watson. So what Sean Payton is presenting is akin to what you do on your dating app of choice, unless you're married, and then you have no need for those things. But for the population that does, what do you put in? What you're looking for in a partner. Age, location, whether they have kids, whether they've been married, interest, hobby, all this kind of stuff. You're inputting all of this, and the dating apps algorithm spits out the people that best fit that criteria. But at that point, is there any guarantee that one of these people that you're going to scroll through, that you're going to marry? Nope. No, there's no guarantee. Because all you're doing is merely putting in your preferences in what you're looking for. Ultimately, there's much more that goes into building a relationship and having a successful relationship than just, hey, this person doesn't have kids, which I like, and they're in a certain age range, which I prefer. There's more to it than that. And that's the point here with Sean Payton's. He didn't crack the code on talent evaluation, and now everyone is going to be run through this algorithm. He's identifying very important traits, but they're one piece of it. All Sean Payton has guaranteed is that he was going to find a quarterback that met those criteria, and that was Bo Nix. But you look at the quarterbacks that he is going to be ultimately measured against, the quarterbacks that he ultimately has to beat. And they scored some of the lowest, or in this case, the highest numbers. Higher is bad, lower is good. They had some of the worst numbers in this. Why? Because a big piece of the successful quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks, is risk taking. Now, they can afford to take more risks with their exceptional athletic ability, in the case of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson especially, but they do take risks. They do improvise. They do go outside of what their coach says to them. And sometimes it burns them. But a lot of times it wins them games and wins them big games. What was the big game that Bo Nix won last year? What close game did the Denver Broncos win? I think they won 1 and lost 8. How did the Broncos fare against Joe Burrow, against Josh Allen, against Lamar Jackson last year? These quarterbacks that, according to Sean Payton's algorithm, would not be desirable. So there will come a point where Bo Nix, being this machine where data is inputted and he makes calculations based on the lowest risk, it's going to limit him and the Denver Broncos. Eventually, Sean Payton's got to let Bo Nix make some mistakes, improvise, hold on to the ball too long for the sake of making a play. There will come a time when that is necessary. And my question is with Bo Nix, it's not his ability to limit mistakes. It's not his ability to process information. Is he gifted enough? Is he athletic enough? Is he talented enough to be able to go head to head with the best that this league has to offer and best them? That's my concern. That's what I don't think the Broncos have. And with all the big talk that's going on around the Denver Broncos right now about Super Bowl and about Bo Nix being one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league, he's got to show it. He's got to start showing it. So good on Sean Payton for knowing what he wants. That is it. That is something that eludes many people in life, knowing exactly what you're looking for, what you want. It means that Sean Payton has the utmost belief that Bo Nix will be successful, right? And it starts there. But eventually down the line, we're going to find out if there is did this raise Bo Nix's floor? Yes. Is his floor higher than most quarterbacks in the league? At least half of them at this point. His ceiling. Eventually, the ceiling is going to matter more than the floor. And that's where I question Bo Nix. And that's where Sean Payton's algorithm is not going to be predictive of Bo Nix's success. Meanwhile, story number 2, no reason to panic over Bo Nix's spot on the depth chart. He is there at the number 1 spot when it comes to quarterback. The most eye-catching thing, if you look at this depth chart, is that there isn't a single rookie, save for the punter, Jeremy Crawshaw, who is the only punter that the Broncos have, that is listed at the top of the depth chart. R.J. Harvey is the 6th running back. Pat Bryant is the 4th wide receiver, just on his side of the formation, if you will. Every rookie except Crawshaw, the lone punter on the Broncos roster, has been buried by Sean Payton which is a common practice with Sean Payton. He does this, and he does this to signify to the rookies, you haven't earned anything yet. When I deem it appropriate, when you have shown me enough, you will elevate on the depth chart. And I'm sure this is a process that will come down to the first depth chart of the regular season. I don't know how necessary this all is with the talent that the Denver Broncos have. I don't think there are a lot of rookies that they have on their roster that would be listed at the top of the depth chart. So I don't know that there's a lot of worry that these egos would get out of control on a lesser team with less talent. Some of these rookies would be all over the top of the depth chart. But it's what Sean Payton does. It's a motivating tactic, and it's the first depth chart of the preseason. He can do this. But what stuck out to me that I think is actually indicative of something that is actually real is the fact that with R.J. Harvey buried intentionally on the depth chart, Audric Estime is the third running back behind Jaleel McLaughlin and behind R.J. Harvey, or behind J.K. Dobbins, excuse me. These initial names are throwing me off. Dobbins, McLaughlin, Estime is the current depth chart at running back. Well, if we can reasonably expect that R.J. Harvey, and I'll even go this far, if R.J. Harvey is not higher than Audric Estime on the depth chart, that might be problematic for R.J. Harvey. But if R.J. Harvey, we would venture to guess, is going to be higher on the depth chart than sixth when the season begins, and I would go so far as to say he will be above Audric Estime, it gives a visual aid to the point I've been making that Audric Estime as a factor in the year 2025, I don't know if it's going to happen. Because you go down the list, you have Dobbins, who's the number one guy. You have, let's say, R.J. Harvey as a highly touted rookie in the second spot. Jaleel McLaughlin as the change of pace guy for the third spot. Already that's too many mouths to feed, per Sean Payton's own estimation. And now you're saying Audric Estime is going to get touches? I think 2025, which was started to be built up as Estime breakout season, not shaping up that way. He's either got to beat out R.J. Harvey, which would make Broncos fans very uneasy, or he has to beat out Jaleel McLaughlin. And it doesn't look like he's doing either right now. And even if this was a motivating tactic for a younger player that Sean Payton was employing, why does Audric Estime, having been in the league and having a first go-round in the NFL, why would he need that motivation? These rookies, I can kind of understand it. A guy who's been around the block at least once, I wouldn't get it. So either way, this doesn't look great for Audric Estime, but it's the first depth chart of the preseason, but that's the battle to watch out for. Estime versus Harvey versus Jaleel McLaughlin in a triple threat match for the second and third spots behind J.K. Dobbins and the Broncos running back room, which leads perfectly into story number 3 today, talking about a triple threat match, because ESPN has now entered into this long talked about agreement with the NFL to talk about it like a trade. ESPN will get NFL Network, including Rich Eisen, by the way. I'm sure you have heard the talk around Rich Eisen's show. But they will get NFL Network and all that goes with that, including Rich Eisen. And they will get NFL Red Zone. In exchange, the NFL will get 10%. This sounds like Shark Tank, actually. A 10% stake in ESPN. Then, in a separate deal, ESPN acquired the rights to what I will always call pay-per-views, but for what is being now called in the WWE world of premium events. WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and trying to think of a third one that I'm sure is still around. And I can't. But those events are now will be on ESPN. So you look at it just from that perspective, this is a coup for ESPN. You already got inside the NBA. Now you're going to get NFL Red Zone and everything that NFL Network has, which gives you the opportunity to produce a lot of content. And you also get the biggest events on the WWE calendar. And they're doing it all to put it in this new streaming platform that they are offering here soon for the low, low price of $29.99 a month. A little pricey, better have a lot to it. And that's what ESPN is banking on for you, the consumer. They get the WWE, they get the NFL Network, and they put a lot of that stuff on their app. You will want to purchase their app. But the one thing that is missing that I don't know yet is whether NFL Red Zone is going to be on the app. As someone who pays for quote unquote cable, this is wonderful news as long as ESPN doesn't really ESPN it up and just leaves it as is and puts Scott Hansen on there as an ESPN subscriber on cable. Awesome. But if you're going to say, you know what, that checks all my boxes, I'm out from cable completely, give me this ESPN direct to consumer app, and then a year from now they're like, yeah, NFL Red Zone's not going to be on here. How are you going to feel about that? Is the value going to be there? So that's kind of the last piece of the puzzle. Will NFL Red Zone be on this app? But it will be. I can't imagine ESPN's, they're going to put it on Sundays. And now they actually have a reason for you to watch ESPN Sunday afternoon. Because now, even if you watch their morning NFL countdown show, you were gone the minute that show was over to CBS, Fox, Red Zone, or Sunday Ticket. Now they got one of those. So big deal for ESPN. I think a big deal if you are an ESPN subscriber on cable. The missing piece is this app that they're launching. For it being $30, Red Zone probably should be on there. But we'll find that out. There's another piece of this, though, that I do want to get into. I got to take a break. But there's another aspect to this deal that Roger Goodell brought up today that I think is a wonderful idea, and I can't believe anyone hasn't thought of it sooner, except people have. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. One other piece to this ESPN agreement with the NFL is that they own the rights to Red Zone and the name Red Zone, which I'm curious how valuable that is ultimately. And we're about to find out, because the one additional thing, and I think Roger Goodell today was asked on SportsCenter by Hannah Storm whether ESPN would have the ability to air NFL Red Zone, but also create college football Red Zone. And the answer is yes. But here's the thing. They could have been doing this all along. And in fact, there are many shows out there that try to replicate what NFL Red Zone does. NHL has tried to do it. NBA has tried to do it. College football does it. The whip around coverage. Heck, we come the NCAA tournament on this station. They do the radio version of that because they'll go from game to game to game. Now, the reason why you can't fully replicate it for a lot of different sports is because they don't have the red zone, right? With the NBA, would you do the last minute of a quarter? Would you just tune into games down the stretch? I mean, is there some moment that you would decide, all right, now we're doing it? But they've tried. Every sport has tried to replicate that success. It's harder to do because football is so conducive to it. So ESPN's been doing something like that with college football. But now they can call it college football red zone. That old question of what's in a name. If they are able to brand their college football product as college football red zone, does that make you want to tune in? Because they do already have shows that go, let's go to this game or this game. They do that. And Fox isn't going to let them, Fox is going to be like, oh, yeah, sure, you could create this and go ahead and show our big noon kickoff game. They're not going to allow it. So it's going to be limited. But they can do that. But what they're kind of betting on is, since they can brand it the same way that the NFL does with Red Zone, that will pique people's interest more, drive their audience. But I would fully expect to hear about the launch of college football Red Zone, if not right when all of this takes effect next year, but soon thereafter. And I actually think that there's a bit more utility to a college football Red Zone, because there are so many games going on. It would be nice to have them kind of aggregated in the way that NFL Red Zone does. I like NFL Red Zone, but I kind of feel like I enjoy just sitting and watching a game from beginning to end. I like to have the red zone option if the game I'm watching is bad, or it's a window where I'm not as locked in. Maybe the Chiefs aren't playing or the Broncos aren't playing. But with college football, there are so many games that I'd be like, yeah, put it all into the red zone. Give me the Cliff Notes version of Virginia versus North Carolina State. I would like to know what's going on. And if something cool's happening, please show it to me. But I don't need to lock in for 3 hours to watch Virginia versus North Carolina State. All due respect to those two programs, I wasn't throwing shade at them. They were the two schools that popped into my head. So that will be something coming down the pike eventually as well. Here's an interesting text based on the whole algorithm talk when it comes to Sean Payton. This from the 719. When it comes to QBs, you just know when you know. You know, when I saw number 15 play, meaning Patrick Mahomes, his first game in Denver, I knew. When I see number 10 play, being Bo Nix, me no. Actually, love the way that you phrase that entire text. What you are discussing is a cross between the eye test and a gut feeling. And I'm not saying that's not part of it. I'm not saying it's not important. But when you are in a billion-dollar industry, you have to, there's a little bit of CYA that goes on, right? And you want to be able to point to this rather than, just if somebody comes to you and says, look, this Patrick Mahomes guy that you drafted before Deshaun Watson, he's terrible. And then John Dorsey, the then general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs, could say, Patrick Mahomes, the measurables, right? We point out the measurables. He should have been successful. He threw for X number of yards in college, this many touchdowns. When we measured him at the combine, he threw the ball further than whatever it is that gets you to fall in love with the quarterback. You want to put a metric behind it. That's what Sean Payton is doing. But I think the false aspect of what Sean Payton is doing is he's almost holding this up to say, I'm not a big measurables guy, right? Because that's the knock on Bo Nix, right? What were the knocks on him? Can't run, can't throw the deep ball, isn't a physical freak like some of these other quarterbacks, all this kind of stuff, speed, all, athleticism, all of that. So Sean Payton saying, I didn't care about any of that. I just cared about the fact that he was a quick processor of information, and he scored really well. When I looked at those disaster plays, those negative plays that affect outcomes, he did really well in. All he's saying, he's not saying he's anti-measurable. He came up with a new measurable. And that's why people are loving it, because we feed off of that stuff. And it's going to be called like the risk-averse score or something like that. And we've had these throughout time. It used to be the Wonderlic, and now it's a 40 time or a vertical. All Sean Payton is doing is throwing a new measurable, a new stat out there and saying, this is the one I love the most. He's not anti-measurables. He's very about the measurables, just his measurable. But I think part of the reason why we want these numbers is because just sitting and simply saying, when you are in a decision-making position in an organization, or even as a fan, as you are trying to argue with your family and friends about which quarterback you like, you want to have a number, right? So then if that quarterback crashes and burns, you could go, well, first of all, it's to make your argument why Nix is better than Jaden Daniels or vice versa. But then if a quarterback doesn't work out, you want to be able to say, but look at what the guy did in college. I'm just as shocked as everybody else. So there's a little bit of that goes into it. And that's going to ultimately be, if Bo Nix doesn't reach the heights Sean Payton foresees for him, that will be the thing that everyone points to. Well, he only had 5% of his dropbacks in college that ended in a turnover or a sack. And even I'm seeing people put out, using the same algorithm, last year's quarterbacks in the NFL, guess who's number one? It was Bo Nix. So that's automatically now what we're going to look back like. I mean, he was so risk adverse. He was so smart with his processing speed. It's one piece to it. What you're mentioning is one piece to it. It's just about what you value the most. And I look at quarterbacks and I start with talent. Right? It's I know, earth-shattering, right? Talent. But that's why I watch these quarterbacks and I say, and it's not totally different than what you're saying, but I go obviously after that, look at the numbers and other things like that. It's more than just one thing. And that's the problem. And that's why no one has figured out down to a science evaluating quarterbacks. That's why Tom Brady is drafted in the 6th round and Brock Purdy is drafted similarly. But yet, most every quarterback drafted in the same spot never works out. Or first-round picks are great, and some first-round picks are terrible because no one has this down to a science. Sean Payton is revealing a preference for quarterback. And his preference for a quarterback is actually something that's a piece of the puzzle. Because in the Seth Wickersham article, you notice that Patrick Mahomes had a really good score. And Sean Payton, it's one of the biggest things he loves to brag about, that he loved Patrick Mahomes. It's just that the Chiefs jumped over the Saints to draft him. So Sean Payton is doing the same thing all of us do. We pick a number, we pick a measurable, we pick an aspect of these quarterbacks to hold up as what we value the most. And it formulates our opinion. But I promise you, whatever metric you have has probably let you down in the past, including the you just know. Has the eye test ever led you astray? I'm sure it has. Because there are exceptions to every rule. It has been well publicized that my metrics that I use has led me astray on more than one quarterback. But it's also led the Cleveland Browns and the Denver Broncos for years, and the Jets for years. They couldn't figure it out. It's one piece to the puzzle. Patrick Mahomes processes the game only slightly worse than Bo Nix does, but yet he's got way more athletic ability than Bo Nix does. And he also has a clutch gene that we have yet to see Bo Nix have. Doesn't mean he doesn't have it. He hasn't shown it. So Bo Nix can be a better processor than Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes has all these other things that we don't know that Bo Nix has that makes Patrick Mahomes a much better quarterback than Bo Nix. Same with Josh Allen. Same with Lamar Jackson. Even more so with those guys because they're worlds apart from Bo Nix. Bo Nix laps the two of them in processing. But yet, he's not anywhere close to the level of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And the most apples to apples comparison, really look at Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. Are they really that close? The answer is no. Jaden Daniels has a lot of other things going for him than Bo Nix does. But this is what Sean Payton is banking on. He says, with this formula, plus my coaching, plus the offensive line we have, plus the defense that we have, and he adds all of this stuff up in the end and says it's enough. And that's why I say when he says that the Broncos are capable of winning a Super Bowl, I understand that there are a lot of aspects to this team that makes them capable of competing for a Super Bowl. Where him and I disagree, and the more eye-popping quote coming out of that Yahoo piece was that he believes Bo Nix in the next 2 years will be one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league. And that's where he and I disagree. That's where I say his algorithm is not predictive of NFL success. It's predictive of why Sean Payton will like you. 719-247-1313. Back to wrap up the show after this. So can we make Bo Nix's nickname the algorithm this season? Is that going to be a thing here? It'll be a thing here on this show. But we'll see if it catches on. Sometimes genius is a little bit ahead of its time. The speaking of the algorithm, he's going to be out on the field tomorrow for a joint practice with the San Francisco 49ers. So we'll see what comes of that. And then, of course, the two teams meet on Saturday in the preseason opener. Just another sign that football is still too far away, but not as far away as it once was. Which I was informed recently when I made a comment similar to that about somebody's birthday. I was told that that's how time works. And it does, but still felt like it needed to be said. I don't know why these comments from Roger Goodell are getting like so much run. So I guess I understand why. So he says that tech giants Apple and Google are representing the league's primary competitors. And I get they're being highlighted as almost because he's disrespecting the NBA, and it's like, no, the NFL's not battling against anybody. Look at what has happened with Christmas Day. Look at what has happened on Christmas Day. Just do me a favor. This Christmas, or whenever the schedule for the NBA comes out, just take a peep at what game they're putting opposite the NFL's game on Christmas. And I promise you, it will be the worst of all the matchups on Christmas. You know how I know the NBA is competing with the NFL, but the NFL does not view the NBA as a competitor? The NFL just took their most hallowed day on the calendar, and the NBA is running away. Watch. They're going to put their best game very early. They'll try to carve out a decent audience at the end of the day. They're furious because they know the NFL just showed up and is like, we'll take Christmas, thank you. Which, by the way, guess who's playing on Christmas? Broncos and Chiefs. You don't think, given the way that this is being hyped up, that the Broncos are not only the biggest threat to knock off Kansas City, but you have the Broncos coach dating all the way back to the end of the playoffs about how confident they feel going against Kansas City? With everything that Sean Payton has laid out this offseason and the way people are talking about the Denver Broncos, Kansas City, Denver is going to be a show. And they're going to put that on Christmas. So if people are surprised to why Roger Goodell said that the NBA or didn't mention the NBA as their biggest competitor, I don't think he said we don't view the NBA as a competitor. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Oh yeah, he said that. We are not competing with the NBA. Our competitors are Apple and Google. So I guess he did say it. Bold. But he's not wrong. NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, they can say they're battling with the NFL all they want. The NFL doesn't even think about them. Doesn't even think about them. So any good business needs competitors to drive themselves, to drive innovation, to make themselves better. So Roger Goodell's saying Apple and Google. so they can, because they're trying to get more into the digital space, which is kind of what they're doing with the ESPN thing, because even though it's going to be looked at ESPN acquiring the NFL network, NFL now has 10% stake in ESPN. The NFL now owns the biggest name in TV channels. They own that. They own 10% of it. So when he makes a comment like that, given the news of the day, you're like, okay, I get it. Now the NFL is in the streaming business. Rather than them selling their rights to streaming partners, they are now their own streaming partner. Remember that movie with Tom Arnold? You probably don't, because again, you have a life, named The Stupids. It was based on a children's book that I very much enjoyed growing up. Well, there's a movie called The Stupids, and there's a song in there called I'm My Own Grandpa, and Tom Arnold launches into a long Broadway-style song of explaining how he's his own grandpa. That reminds me of the NFL. They are now their own streaming partner because they own part of ESPN. So NFL's looking up. We talked about how this benefits ESPN and you, the consumer, as a consumer of ESPN, or impacts you. I don't know if it benefits you quite yet. Well, that remains to be seen. But how the NFL won today? They own a chunk of ESPN, who are now airing a lot of the NFL games. It's business. I don't know how all of this stuff is able to happen, and I think President Trump actually says he might step in, but he says that about a lot of things. So I don't know what will come of that, but it seems weird. I don't know if I'm not saying it's illegal, just weird. All right. Before I go, let's have a honest conversation, fellas. Are you always feeling tired? Don't have any drive, don't have any focus, any motivation. It's not just stress or getting older. It could be low testosterone. And it's just not about, hey, how you feeling today? It can wreck your mood. It can make it difficult for you to sleep. It has an impact on your relationships, your confidence. So this is really a life altering for the worst thing that you may be going through. But there is a way to help. It's through the experts at Low T Center, and they're offering right now a free testosterone test. So you could see if that actually is what is causing all of these things. And if it is, just know that you're in the right place to get the best treatment possible. And you can even choose in-center care or have treatment delivered to your door, medically monitored, and both designed to get you back to feeling like you again. So don't wait. Take the first step. Visit fixmylowt.com. That's fixmylowt.com. And take back your life with the local pros at Low T Center who know how to help. That will do it for today's show. Appreciate your time, your interaction, and look forward to doing it all over again tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.